Chapter 26 to 27, Gratitude. The sun dazzled Taroa Island in all its brilliance. Not a single spot was left unexposed to the sunlight. The birds in the sky were chirping. For the people, it was a sign that a new day was about to begin. The light also penetrated Pride's eyelids. Blinded by the light, he quickly rolled over to the side. In recent times, he always slept poorly. Thus he wished to remain to lie for a bit longer. As the rustling of the bushes and chirping in the air only ensured constant noise, it was simply no longer feasible for him to continue sleeping in peace. Sitting with his legs crossed, he stretched his arms. As he looked around, his stomach began to growl. I guess it's time to do some hunting, Pride thought, smirking. After putting his coat back on, he hid the boat in one of the bushes as before. He focused briefly. His observation hockey could perceive many things from his surroundings. 2 faint human auras. Looks like they didn't escape after all. Pride could also sense many animals. Therefore, he didn't hesitate for too long and made his way to kill one of them. A few minutes later, branch by branch was pushed away using his right arm to approach a tiger-like creature. Harg! Growling, the tiger headed in Pride's direction, for he spotted his prey too. The tiger accelerated with enormous speed and rushed towards Pride. As both only separated a few meters from each other, the beast jumped on all fours up in the air. It wanted to pounce on Pride and tear him apart. Pride, on the other hand, just evaded the tiger by mere inches. Instead of repositioning itself and trying one more time, the beast was lying unconscious on the ground as it landed. Nice try though. Guessed right. As soon as the animal was in the air, Pride activated his conqueror's hockey and centered it solely on the tiger. Pride unsheathed his sword and approached the motionless creature. A few moments later, his blade pierced the throat of the latter. After wiping his black blade on its fur, he placed it back in its rightful place. As Pride held the corpse by the head and was about to return to his boat, he heard a loud scream. Soraya! Pride, recognizing the voice and knowing it was from yesterday's boy, dropped the head and pinpointed their location. With both feet on the ground, he burst forth with terrific force. Looking back, one would clearly notice his footprints, deeply embedded in the soil. Whoosh! The branches rattled back and forth as Pride passed by them at an insane pace. Once he reached the 2 kids, he spotted the little girl and a lion-like being looming in front of her. Dripping with saliva, it looked at her. The boy that previously shouted his sister's name rushed in her direction. Pride guessed that they had separated for a brief instant. Everything occurred in a matter of seconds. The lion stretched out its right paw with claws extended and charged at the girl. Arj, Naoki! She screamed as she closed her eyes and held her hands in front of her face. It seemed like Naoki was too slow and wouldn't reach his sister in time. Thud, thud. His heart was pounding furiously. The mere thought of losing his sister before his very eyes drove him completely insane. Come on, faster, faster! He shouted in his mind as he stared at his legs. His tempo dropped once he realized the distance and the paw that almost reached his sister.
Asterisk boom asterisk.
For Naoki, everything happened at a speed he couldn't comprehend. A smile erupted on his face at the sight of a man standing in front of his sister. That's the man from last night. Sora's hands slowly spread in front of her face as she realized that the painful strike wasn't coming. With slightly dilated eyes, she looked through her spread hands and saw a man firmly holding the paw with one hand. Pride held the paw with his right hand, which was coated with a black essence. He looked to the boy on his left side that was running in his direction. He slightly shook his head. Yar yar. Staring deeply into the lion's eyes, a crimson glow shrouded Pride's eyes momentarily, without the others around sensing anything. Sheer terror. That's what the lion felt at that very moment, and without being able to respond properly, his eyes lost the luster of awareness. Thud. After Pride released the paw, the lion fell to the ground motionless. Why did I think of Jotaro's phrase at that time? Well, whatever, it suited perfectly. Naoki, embracing his sister and apologizing continuously, devoted his attention to Pride afterward. He ran straight to him. In tears, he knelt down. Sniff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wouldn't have made it in time, and she is my everything. I don't know how to express my gratitude. Sniff. How could I leave her alone and out of my sight for a moment? He shouted with blood-red eyes. Nissan, it's not your fault, said the little sister while hugging him tearfully from behind. Pride, whose stomach was growling and had no desire for further dramatics, looked at both children. No problem, you don't need to thank me, but surely both of you must be hungry as well. Common, get up, a feast is awaiting us, he spoke Pride grinningly. The sun was still shining over the island. In the woods stood a self-built wooden house. 3 people were sitting around it as a campfire burned. An intense smell spread out. The 2 dead beasts were chopped into pieces and put in skewers, hanging over the fire. Sora, wiggling with her feet, glanced at Pride. "Thank you, Nissan, for saving my life." "As I said, you don't have to thank me," spoke Pride as he took a closer look at both children. The night before, it was rather dark and he was just aware that these were two children. Now as it was daylight, he could examine them better. Sora, in his opinion, looked quite cute. She was small, had a light skin tone, medium-length black hair, and green eyes. He was certain that, in the distant future, she would become a very attractive woman. Naoki also had a light skin tone. On the other hand, short brown hair, brown eyes as well as a taller stature. Both were wearing old, tattered clothes. The two of them probably hadn't an easy time at all, without parents, stuck on a remote island and on their own. But still they are better off than most. Each day children are mercilessly killed by pirates or used as toys. Don't even get me started on how the captured children are treated by the Tenryubito. The scent intensity reached its peak. "Go ahead. Grab as many skewers as you can," spoke Pride as he moved to grab one. "Munch, munch." While everyone reduced their skewers with each bite, Naoki looked at Pride seriously. "How did you do that?" "How managed what?" replied Pride with his mouth stuffed. With a clenched fist, he stared at the ground. "To get that strong? I mean, you held the beast with just one hand and without hitting it, the lion fell to the ground." Following this, he stood up all of a sudden. "I will do everything. Please teach me how to become as strong as you." Pride could see the conviction and his will to succeed in his gaze. "What are your goals and why exactly do you want to gain strength?" Although the question was unnecessary, Pride still wanted to hear his response. "I really don't have any great goals. I just want to be able to defend myself if someone tries to enslave me or my sister again. I just wish for her to grow up in peace and happiness. That she can find friends for herself and maybe can get married in the far future. That she will know that nothing can happen to her, since she has me, her mighty big brother," he said from the bottom of his heart with a smile. "Patrick Redfield, I don't know where exactly he is. He could be here in the West Blue, but also God knows where. I was already intending to spend some time on each island I visit. My issue is, I don't know how many pirates are out there that are actually stronger or far stronger than me. And on 2 occasions it has been proven that monstrosities linger here in the Blues instead of in the New World. Because of that, I also want to and intend to use my time on the islands to get continually stronger. There is no way of knowing when I will come across someone that surprisingly outclasses me. Therefore, I will remain here for the time being. I could offer him some advice and teach him during my stay. However, it depends on him as to how much he learns from it and whether he continues to train after my departure. All right, I will stay on Taroa Island for a while. I will teach you during that time. However, to gain strength, you will have to suffer. And I don't want to hear any complaints. One more thing, do you wish to learn the way of the spear? After all, my specialty is basically only with the sword." "Yes," he shouted with raised arms. "I thought you were going to say no. Thank you, and no, you won't hear a peep from me. And the spear, I only made it to intimidate strangers. I can't even use it properly, so I'm perfectly fine learning how to use a sword. And besides, swords are cool," he said with a chuckle. "All right, we'll make a quick trip to the town later to pick up some equipment. So tomorrow we'll start with the training." Pride actually preferred to go alone, however. After accepting to be with them for a particular time, he didn't feel like leaving them alone. It was not to his taste. What if something happened to them? He would certainly blame himself for that. After finishing their meal, they packed up a few more belongings and left the forest plain. After a short time, they already reached the town. It was teeming with people as the day before. At first, they visited a place that sold aromatic herbs and the like. I mean, meat tastes good on its own, but it tastes a lot better mixed with spices. Subsequently, they went to a store that sold swords and other similar equipment. They left it several minutes later, carrying a number of wooden swords in their hands. Whoosh, whoosh. Both performed sword strikes and were laughing. In the end, they're just children, thought Pride, smiling as he watched them. Time flew by. Before they knew it, darkness was already descending. Pride, who was already feeling slightly hungry just like the kids, didn't really feel like putting in the effort to slay an animal and to grill it afterward. Therefore, he decided to have dinner with the children at the pub. As for the children, they were excited. It had been a long time since they had dined in public establishments as they lacked the necessary means. After they entered the establishment and sat down, all of them ordered dishes to their heart's content. Pride let them do. It wasn't a common occurrence, so he let them order some of almost every dish, even though there would be a lot left over afterward. After the children, with bloated bellies and smiling, could not eat anymore and Pride was also satiated. He paid the bill and they headed back. Pride was inwardly grateful that he didn't run into yesterday's waiter. What if he also had been standing to hear the feedback from the children? It was already night. Once they reached the cottage, Sora held Pride's coat with her small hands. She looked up at Pride somewhat distressed. Can you please stay with us? Probably she couldn't process the assault from the lion. How could she? She is barely 5 years old. Smiling, he gently placed his hand over her head. No problem. Let's go to my boat quickly, so I can get my sleeping stuff over here. It took a few minutes for Pride to take all his things with him and for them to reach the children's sleeping area. The two had respectively the left and right sides, prepared with simple sleeping spaces. Only that now, between them laid Pride. He closed his eyes. Naoki, go to sleep. Tomorrow, the training will start quite early. Already on it. In no time, all three of them were deep sound asleep. Tomorrow was a huge day for the little fellow.